Hi, everybody. I want to share something with you that happened to me and Emily yesterday, and I hope that it might change somebody's behavior when they're driving, but also because I want to draw attention to just how much God really does love each and every one of us and how He is involved in our lives. We have to be watching to see it, but He loves us so much, and it's Valentine's Day, so I just want to share this with all of you. I was driving locally yesterday morning. It was about 11 o'clock, and Emily and I were heading to my parents' house. And it was raining a little bit, but not not hard, not a lot. And I was approaching an intersection, and I was going to be the first in line at the light, at the red light. And so I stopped. And while I was stopped, I was a little bit distracted with something that was happening in a yard on the corner to my left. And normally I don't do that. Normally, especially if I'm the first person in line at the stoplight, I'm very focused on when the light turns green for me so that I'm not holding anybody up. It drives me nuts when people are first in line at the light or at the drive-through or wherever, and it's their turn to move and they just sit there because they're looking at their phone. And so anyway, normally I'm even anticipating that my light's going to turn green, but yesterday I was focused on something that was happening in that yard, and so when I turned my head back, the light was already green. And so like I normally do, I looked left and right quickly to see if everybody was stopping, because we know they don't. And it looked like there was one car on my left and one car on my right, and they had both either stopped or were in the process of stopping. And so I started out into the intersection, and I must have noticed motion, because I turned my head and saw this truck coming from my right, and it was absolutely flying towards the intersection, and I knew there was no way it was going to stop. And honestly, it sent me into a little bit of a panic. For a moment, I thought that I had run a red light and that I had come out into the middle of the intersection when the other direction was really the one with the green light. And I looked at the light for the other direction, and it was still red. And I looked at my light again, and it was still green. And I thought, oh my gosh. And like, I had enough time to do all of that before the truck actually came through the intersection. But when I looked back, there was another car going straight through the intersection, but they were coming from the other way. And they just barely got through the intersection. I don't know how that truck missed the tail of that van that came through. But if I had not stopped, if I had not seen that truck coming and I had not stopped, there is no way it would have missed me. And I really believe it would have T-boned me. And I was in a minivan, but I mean, I didn't have it loaded down with anything. It was just me and Emily. And we so easily could have been, at a minimum, just knocked into that other van that was coming straight across the intersection as well. And, it could have been a very serious accident. It could have been a fatal accident for me, for Emily, for one of the other drivers. Thank God it wasn't. And there was no accident at all. In fact, nobody even blew a horn. But it so easily could have been so serious. And what was going on with that truck driver, I have no idea. I mean, like I said, it was 11 in the morning. It's not like it was rush hour. It wasn't a work day. It was a Saturday. I don't, I don't know. And because I was so stunned and I was checking the stoplights, I really didn't look at the driver of the truck. So I don't know if they were talking on a phone or talking to somebody else in their vehicle. But I want to share more about what happened because there are several things I believe that led up to me not fully pulling out into that intersection as the green light told me to do. And it really started the day before. So the day before was Friday, and I was taking Emily to daycare. She had awakened late, and I had a 9 o'clock meeting to facilitate. And so it was a little after 10 before I took her to daycare. And we have to go through a particular intersection. And we went through that intersection about 10 after 10 Friday morning. Again, not rush hour. And I took her to daycare, dropped her off. They were having a Valentine's party, so I took in the goodies and the Valentines and kissed her goodbye and got back in the van and came back that same way that I had gone. And definitely not more than 15 minutes had elapsed when I returned to that same intersection that I was talking about a second ago. And there were 2 ambulances, 2 fire trucks, and 2 or 3 police cars. And they were blocking the intersection, and there were 2 cars that had collided. And the windshield was out of one of them. And anyway, I couldn't go up to the intersection, but there's a bank at that same corner. And so I pulled into the bank parking lot and pulled through there and got on the route that I needed to be on. But as I was pulling out of the bank parking lot, one of the ambulances was turning from the accident with its lights on, headed towards the interstate, probably to take one of the people to the hospital. And I thought, goodness, for me to have only been, the lapse in time to be 15 minutes, this accident had to have happened nearly as soon as I went through it, because people would have had to call 911, and then the emergency vehicles have to be dispatched and they have to have time to get there. And then in this case, they had to have time to load somebody into the ambulance and take them. So, it was just kind of, I was very aware of that could have easily been us. And, it wasn't us, and I'm grateful that it wasn't us, but I was like, goodness, I don't have any idea what happened with that accident, but wow, I'm glad we weren't there when that happened. So then Saturday, the day of our near miss, I got in the van with Emily to go to my mom and dad's and realized I had less than 1/8 of a tank of gas. And I don't normally let my gas tank get that low, and it's not enough to get to my mom's house, my parents' house, and get back home. And so I decided to stop at the gas station at the intersection where that accident had happened on Friday. And so I stopped at the gas station on Saturday morning and got gas and got back in the van, and I'm sitting at the stoplight waiting for it to turn green so that I can go straight. And I'm coming from a different direction than I was the day before, but it was just the day before that I had seen, all the emergency vehicles. And so I was just kind of thinking about that accident that had happened. And I noticed that the other direction's light was about to change. It had turned yellow, and I looked to see what kind of traffic was coming, and there was a truck coming, and I'm like, they are not going to stop. And sure enough, the light turned red, and the truck was at least 20 feet from the white line where you're supposed to stop when it turned red. And he just kept going right through the intersection. And this is one of those lights where the other direction, the light changes immediately. I mean, there's no lag between when one turns red and the other one turns green. It's like instant, they swap. And, I was paying attention. There was no, near accident or anything like that. But I was like, good grief, 2 days in a row. And so anyway, I proceeded towards the next intersection where I did almost get hit. So I proceeded straight down the road. And as I'm approaching that stoplight, over at the left, there's this cute house. I like it. I don't really know why, but I like it. And it's on the corner. And this particular day, there was a man in the back of the house wearing a bright fluorescent yellow-green kind of chartreuse jacket, doing something with an electrical panel or something of that nature. And because of his jacket color, it caught my eye. And then as I proceeded past the house, you can't really see the back of the house anymore, but you can see the front of the house, and the front yard was flooded. And we've not been having great weather lately. There's been a lot of rain, but there are several more days of rain in the forecast. And I was just thinking to myself, goodness, their yard is already flooded. What's it going to be like 5 days from now when we get close to the end of this rain? And that's what I was looking at and thinking about when my light turned green, when I turned back and noticed that it was green. And, after we nearly got hit, as I completed the drive to my parents' house, I just reflected on all the things that built up to that moment that kept me from maybe being more hasty, maybe not, in any case, ending up in the intersection and getting hit. The accident the day before, I don't know how you all are. Maybe you blow those things off. But when I see something where I was pretty close to being in an accident, and I've certainly been closer than that, but it usually affects me for a day or two. I'm a bit more cautious. I'm pretty cautious anyway, but I'm a bit more cautious when something like that happens. And then with the truck running through the same intersection again, as I'm watching the light turn red and I see this truck coming, I'm like, he is not going to stop. And he didn't. That happened right before I got to the next intersection where that person came through long after their light had turned red. All those things. And the guy wearing a chartreuse jacket. I've never seen anybody wearing a chartreuse jacket. It was not like there was no work truck there. There was no work zone or anything like that. That caught my eye. It was like God laid out all of these things to keep Emily and I from being in that intersection and getting hit. And, the Bible tells us that God is no respecter of persons. And He loves every one of us. And He cares about the details of our lives. It's not just, I know it's so hard for us to understand because we're humans and things work differently on earth than they do in heaven. But He knows what's going on with every single person on this planet. And He cares about every single person on this planet. And Jesus died so that every single person on this planet could live life in eternity with Him. And I just hope two things from this video. I hope that you'll take a minute to maybe think about a time that you had an experience like this where you can see that, something or several things lined up to keep you from getting hurt or getting killed. I think we've all heard stories about 9/11 where there were certain people that were late to work that morning, and so they weren't in the building when it collapsed. And we've heard other stories like that. Maybe you have a story like that. And just take a moment to think about it and thank God for protecting you, for caring and loving you. and participating in your life. And then secondly, if you regularly get on your phone to text or browse the web or do a Facebook Live while you're driving, please stop. Please don't be that next person that causes an accident, kills a pedestrian, kills a mom and her 3-year-old daughter because you wanted to do a Facebook Live or you wanted to check a message. Just stop. Get off the phone. Thanks, everybody.